up? How can I not review that Raw? You know, we've run into this situation a couple of times before where we have, like, the dog shits Raw, followed by one of the greatest Raws we've ever seen. WWE really pandered to the Montreal audience nicely tonight. That was a fantastic Raw, top to bottom, great matches, a few surprises, and just an overall different feel to it. I thought it was really good and a solid show by the WWE, especially when you compare it to last week, which absolutely sucks, which is why I didn't even come up here and do a Raw review last week, which I apologize for. After my Extreme Rules reaction video, and then when I watched Raw, the only thing we really learned was the main event of Payback. I really didn't feel like coming up and doing a commentary. I figured I would wait until this week. And I'm glad that I did, because Raw gave us a ton of stuff to talk about this week, and I'll also get into some of the other news stories going around over the past week that I might have missed. But let's start right off with Raw and the lead into Payback. Now, this is a quick pay-per-view this time. I think it's only a 3-week turnaround. Next week, I believe, is the go-home show, and I think we only have 2 matches announced so far. But Raw opens with a really quick Randy Orton promo that was promptly interrupted by Roman Reigns. Now, just to backtrack to last week, because I never did talk about Raw, they're still running the storyline with Kane and how there's dissension with the Authority and him and Seth Rollins and everything. Well, he makes the decision that the fans are going to vote on what the main event is for Payback. The options were Seth Rollins versus Randy Orton, Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns, or Seth Rollins versus both of them. And of course, nearly the entire WWE Universe votes for the triple threat match, so that is the main event going into this Monday night's Raw. Randy Orton and Roman Reigns are cutting a promo on each other in the ring. Can they trust each other and all this shit, when they're interrupted by not the Authority, by not Seth Rollins, but by the New Day, of all people. This right here was just a tremendous surprise to me, because I like the New Day. I'm glad they won the titles, and I can see how the fans are going to start getting into them, because they are pretty fucking funny, and we saw that tonight on Raw. Well, they come out on the stage, and I guess they've got the Freebird rule going on, or the Demolition rule going on. I really didn't know they were doing this, but I guess any of them can defend the belts, which I'm not really a fan of. I think a tag team should be a fucking tag team, and there should not be 3 members. I don't think that's fair, but who cares? The tag team titles are a joke anyway, and the New Day's pretty entertaining, so I don't care what they do. But they come out there and actually challenge Randy Orton and Roman Reigns to a 3-on-2 handicap match to take place right there on the spot. Now, I immediately love this, because I was jumping up and down. I'm like, oh, perfect. The WWE can easily give New Day the victory here. They're already teasing all this dissension between Randy Orton and Roman Reigns. They've had feuds in the past. It's not like they should be able to get along really well out there. I'm like, oh, perfect. Just do something in the match where one of them fucks the other one and New Day steals a win. This is a win-win situation all around. There's no downside at all. Helps out the New Day, giving them a victory like that, and it doesn't do anything to harm Roman Reigns or Randy Orton, because the whole match is a clusterfuck anyway. And luckily, instead of having Roman Reigns and Randy Orton squash these guys, that's what the WWE did. They actually put New Day over, and this Kofi got the pin on Randy Orton. When did you ever think, after that infamous botch 5 or 6 years ago, that Kofi Kingston would ever pin Randy Orton's shoulders to the mat again in his career? It was kind of cool to see that. The New Day, of course, goes absolutely apeshit, celebrating like crazy, even celebrating in the backstage area as Kane is walking by, and they're screaming out, "We did it, Kane! We did it, Kane!" I was laughing my ass off. This leads into, I believe, a Kane and Seth Rollins segment in the same backstage area where Seth and Kane are arguing or whatever the fuck, and Kane decides that Seth Rollins is going to have a match tonight against Dean Ambrose, and if Dean Ambrose wins, he will be inserted into the main event, and the triple threat match will now be a fatal 4-way. This got really interesting. I didn't see them doing this on Monday Night Raw. This was cool. So you have Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose. Let's go ahead and skip ahead to that match now, because it was fantastic. This was my favorite match of Monday Night Raw. I thought it was awesome. The crowd was into it. They were going crazy. Ambrose was on fire. Rollins was on fire. Everything was clicking. It was perfect. This is awesome chance, the whole deal. Dean Ambrose actually wins the match with a roll-up. He is able to score the pin on Seth Rollins as J&J Security fucks something up for him. Gets the surprise victory, and here we have Dean Ambrose, who has gone from losing just about every pay-per-view he's performed on since the Shield split, to working with Luke Harper in crazy matches, to now all of a sudden he's in the main event. He has a title shot at Payback. This is great. Boy, I'll tell you what, if this was a year ago, Randy Orton would be fucked. He'd be in there with the whole Shield. Last year it was Evolution versus the Shield, and this time it's the Fatal 4-Way with Randy Orton, Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, and Dean Ambrose all vying for the WWE Heavyweight title. And just to backtrack a little bit too, something I forgot to mention. At the end of the tag match with the New Day, I believe Kane did come out and tell Randy Orton and Roman Reigns that they would be wrestling again later on that night in the main event against each other. So that was going to be your main event tonight for Raw. And why don't we talk about that? Let's keep all this stuff on the same subject so we don't have to keep going back and forth or whatever. But if you fast forward to the main event, not very good, ended the exact way I thought it would, and just no decision at all, just a complete clusterfuck. Everybody got involved. The match wasn't very good. The match wasn't very long, but the best part was is that Dean Ambrose ended up coming out in the end, and he was the last man standing. Seth Rollins, I think, got thrown out of the ring, and then Randy Orton hit Roman Reigns with the RKO, and then Ambrose hit Randy Orton with his finisher, so he was the last man standing in the ring, which was nice to see. I'm glad that Ambrose is getting a title shot. I do not expect him to win. As of right now, I don't know how you can pick anybody other than Seth Rollins. This is what they were going to do. I knew this as soon as he won the title. They're just going to string up some situations for him, especially situations where he's the underdog, like in this Fatal 4-Way. I've mentioned before how I kind of compare his reign to that of Kurt Angle when he first won the title, how it was like, wow, I can't believe this guy actually won, and he somehow, even though he seems overmatched at times, he escapes pay-per-view after pay-per-view after pay-per-view with the belt. And he was doing it in gimmick matches and multi-man matches and things like that, just like Seth Rollins is doing now. So this is a Fatal 4-Way where seemingly the odds are completely against him, but they're going to do some sort of wacky finish where he's able to score a pin. You can see it coming a mile away. I just hope the match is good. I'm happy Dean Ambrose is involved. I'm happy all the Shield guys are involved for that matter. Think about where they were a year ago. Think about where they are now. Now they're all in a title match together. If you take Randy Orton out of this equation, this was something we thought of as a possible main event for a WrestleMania in the future. So they can definitely do big things in this match, and I hope they do. But at the end of the day, you got to know that Seth Rollins will be hanging on to that title a lot longer than this. Payback is not the platform. It's not the stage to take the belt off of Seth Rollins. You want to get it off of him in a dramatic way. That's what they should be using this WWE title for. So you got to think that he's going to hang on to this thing at least until SummerSlam. This is a throwaway pay-per-view. These are the type of pay-per-views I don't like. We just had a pay-per-view 3 weeks ago. It's time to have another one already. Basically, the WWE just has to throw this shit together and hope that it's good, and hopefully it will be. And if it can be half as good as Raw was tonight, then I will be perfectly happy with Payback and how it performs. But Good Mike Works' early prediction will be that Seth Rollins will retain the WWE title. Now, not only did we have the surprise of the New Day interrupting Roman Reigns and Randy Orton and scoring a victory over them, not only did we have the surprise of Dean Ambrose being inserted into the main event of Payback, but we also had a surprise debut. John Cena's Open Challenge. I told you this angle was going to be fun. I don't care what you say about John Cena. I much prefer him as U.S. champion than Rusev, because at least with John Cena, every single week he's got a new opponent, and this just sets the stage. They can build and build and build to a big debut or debuts. And tonight, Sami Zayn was the guy that challenged him. I actually thought it would be somebody like Neville, who I think could go out there and give John Cena a really good, hard-fought match, but lose. And I didn't think it would be a guy like Sami Zayn until I remembered, oh shit, Montreal's his hometown. I guess they most likely will bring him out for this. The fans could smell it. They were chanting it. They were singing his theme song. And of course, when he came out, he entered to a huge pop. I really like him. I like a lot of those NXT guys. And of course, he was going to lose. You didn't think he was going to win, did you? I hope there wasn't too much John Cena bitching in this situation. This is fucking obvious. I don't care who you are. If you're in a situation like Sami Zayn coming in as a new guy, a rookie, a guy that's not even made it to the main roster yet, and you're going up against their big star, you're not going to win. You're going to put up a good effort and a great fight, and you're going to come out just short. And that's exactly what they did. It was a long match. It was a good match. John Cena graciously let this kid, as he does everybody, kick out of his finisher. He doesn't care who you are. As long as you have a pulse, you can kick out of the AA. So Zayn is able to kick out of that, gave John Cena a really good match. John Cena wound up winning with the way he's been winning lately, with that funny-ass springboard stunner, and then he sets him up for a second AA and ends up getting the pin and winning the match. I was just happy for Sami Zayn. You know, that had to be a thrill, you know, to come out there and on your first night, you're going to work with John Cena. It reminded me of John Cena's debut. He came out there on his first night and worked with Kurt Angle in the same exact type of situation. Gave Kurt Angle a great match and a run for his money, but wound up losing in the end. And I thought it was a really good segment. I thought it was great for Sami Zayn. The crowd fucking loved it. And all in all, that was a really good piece of business. I enjoyed it immensely. And oh, Jesus, how did I forget? I can't believe I almost forgot about this. Let's not forget about the beginning of the match when John Cena's out there cutting his promo on Rusev, and we'll get to the Rusev match in a minute. He's out there waiting for the challenger to come down for the open challenge, and Bret Hart's music hits. Returning to the scene of the crime, Bret back in Montreal. Comes out to the ring, and you're like, well, surely he's not gonna fucking challenge John Cena. He must be out there to announce someone. So Bret gets in the ring and says, I'm gonna introduce to you a great wrestler and somebody that's gonna challenge John Cena tonight, yada, yada, yada. And Heath Slater shows up to cut a really stupid promo. They finally shit-can him out of there right away, and then Bret gets into the real announcement and says that John Cena's challenger will be Sami Zayn, and everybody, Twitter fucking popped like crazy. That was really great shit. Now, speaking of John Cena, of course, he is going to Payback to face Rusev in an I Quit match. That was something else I was not able to get into last week because I didn't do a Raw review, but it is official. After Rusev's loss at Extreme Rules, that was what the whole Lana going into the Authorities dressing room was all about, to try to get a match with John Cena again. A fourth pay-per-view match in a row. This time it's going to be an I Quit match. And now there's the whole Lana storyline tied into this. So they're doing the thing where the fans are into her and they cheer for her and they don't give a shit about Rusev. A lot of people have compared this to Mark Mero and Sable. That was a different time. It's not really the same other than just the fans like the woman. I think Rusev is much more over and much more believable than Mark Mero or Johnny B. Bad ever was. But it's a similar situation where the girl is getting all the attention and it's starting to piss off the person that she's walking to the ring every night. So now the speculation goes, how are they going to go with the finish of this match? To me, it can go one of two ways. Now, what a lot of people have been speculating is like, hey, this might not be horrible. Maybe Rusev can actually get a victory here. Maybe John Cena, because he's just such a good old boy, Rusev will finally snap on Lana and put her in some sort of predicament. Maybe he'll put her in his finisher. And John Cena either has to give up or Rusev will snap her neck or break her back or something like that. And then John Cena gets on the mic and says, okay, I quit, I quit, I quit. That's the only way that John Cena is going to lose this match, because he doesn't give up, right? It's on his fucking armbands and his wristbands and his t-shirt. He never gives up. So obviously he's not going to give up. But if he has to give up to save someone else's life, then maybe he will. So they can either go in that direction. That seems a little bit obvious. And I think WWE might change that up to maybe a John Cena victory. Maybe this is the final straw for Lana. Instead of Rusev snapping and turning on her, maybe she fucks something up again for the last time that costs Rusev the match, and then he gets pissed and I don't know, manhandles her a little bit after the match, causing Cena to save her or anything like that. So not only does Cena win, but Rusev lose Lana and Rusev loses. I wouldn't really like to see that happen. I hope that it doesn't. I guess there could be a throwing of the towel situation in as well, but I don't think that will work. I think the only person that could really stop the match if either guy is unconscious would be the referee. You know, you think back to the Bret Hart, Steve Austin I Quit match from WrestleMania. Stone Cold passed out. Ken Shamrock had to stop the match. So if John Cena gets Rusev in a predicament where he puts him in his finisher and Rusev is too tough to say I quit and Rusev passes out, Lana throwing in the towel I don't think necessarily would stop the match. I think the referee would just have to stop it. So I don't know what direction they're going to go in here. They are billing this as the final time that John Cena and Rusev will face each other, so I have a hard time believing Rusev will win. I really, really hope that he does. Like I said, with an I Quit match and the Lana tie in there, maybe there's something they can do where John Cena can lose and not look weak. And they can do the same thing with Rusev. If they can figure out a way to make John Cena win under the same sort of circumstances where Rusev really got royally fucked over by either Lana fucking up or something else, and then John Cena is able to win and finally squash the feud with Rusev and put an end to it for real this time, then it shouldn't harm him too much either. I mean, this guy wasn't going to be world champion. He was already working with Cena. There's nowhere really for him to go other than take a step back. Whether he loses matches to Cena or not, he was kind of going to take a step back anyway. You would have to think it's either this or go after the world title, but there's no room in the world title scene right now. You already have Rollins, you already have Orton, you already have Roman Reigns, you're going to have Brock when he comes back. There's really not a place for Rusev in the world title situation, so other than the world title, this is about as high as he can go. So after this feud with Cena, if he does in fact lose, then yeah, he might have to take a step backwards and go back to feuding with Ryback and people like that. But in no way, shape, or form is that a burial, and that doesn't mean that his program with Cena harmed him in any way. This is what would happen no matter who he was working with. But I hope whatever they do in the Payback match is at least interesting, and Lana, is the wild card in this. WWE apparently really has a lot of big plans for her. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Lana. I think she's fucking gorgeous. She's one of the hottest women in the WWE, but I don't know if WWE has that big of a hard-on for her. I mean, there's lots of beautiful women in the WWE. This is not like the days of Sable and Sunny where you only had 1 or 2 or 3 women in the WWE at the most. Now you got 40 of them. And every damn one of them are crazy hot. So Lana, yes, she's beautiful, but they're all beautiful. And if they're going to make her a babyface, what are they going to do with her? I mean, what's she going to do? Is she going to be like AJ a little bit? Is she going to wrestle some and maybe align herself with a babyface and accompany him to the ring? Other than that, what kind of a role could they put her in other than announcer? I just don't understand. So I think she's got to be with somebody. And if she's not going to be with somebody, then she's got to start getting in the ring. So I don't know what their plans are. You guys probably know better than I do. But as of right now, those are the only 2 matches announced for Payback, the Fatal 4-Way and Cena and Rusev. I'm sure a couple will be announced on SmackDown, and I'm sure the rest of it will be announced on Raw because Raw is the go-home show, apparently. One match I guess we can probably pencil in, though, would be Bray Wyatt and Ryback. Ryback comes out to the ring to be interviewed by Renee Young. And, of course, while he's out there, you saw it coming. Bray Wyatt comes on the Titantron with one of his typical promos. You just kind of had to listen to him ramble on a little bit about it. He's very good, and it was a very good promo like always, but it's typical Bray Wyatt stuff. He's fucking with Ryback now. Ryback even cut a halfway decent promo on Raw tonight. He wasn't bad at all. So we will see how the matches translate and how long the feud goes on and who wins them. You know, what do you do with Ryback here? He's already been in the toilet. They already completely fucking buried him and made him build himself all the way back up. So now that he's up here, what do? Do you have him lose again? Or do you have him defeat a guy that is fucking awesome and that we all love and has already suffered a couple of big losses? John Cena, Undertaker. Now he's going to move into a feud with Ryback and lose. I'd like to see Bray Wyatt get back on the winning track. So that's who I'm rooting for in this feud, is Bray Wyatt, hands down. I think he's 100 times better than Ryback. But Ryback has a chance to surprise me here. We'll see how the matches are. Something tells me about this feud, it might not be as horrible as I'm making it out to be. I'm guessing the pay-per-view in June, is that Money in the Bank? If it is, these guys will probably have a match there, and then maybe the blow-off at Battleground. But there's still a lot to be seen with these guys, and I will judge things as I go. I do want to acknowledge a return tonight on Monday Night Raw. At least I think this was a return for her. Tamina Snuka, has she not been on TV for a while? I believe she was injured. So unless she returned last week or on SmackDown or something, this is the first I have seen of her. And she came out there with Naomi, and they attacked the Bella Twins during their entrance. How fucking dare you, Tamina? And wait a minute, did The Rock's cousins just fucking attack John Cena's girlfriend? Is this feud over or not? I thought it was kind of interesting. I'm glad Tamina's back. I guess they have to align her with someone now that she's been long since done with AJ Lee and AJ's gone. So maybe she's forming an alliance with Naomi, which is perfectly fine because Naomi is the wife of one of the Usos, who's also in the same family. So there's a lot of family shit going on there. So to team the two of them up seems like a good idea. But if they don't stop fucking with my woman, I'm going to have to pay both of them a visit. So watch your ass, ladies. What else am I missing from Raw? There was a tag team match, wasn't there? King Barrett. By the way, I haven't mentioned the King of the Ring is another thing that took place last week. They had the first couple of matches or first couple of rounds on Raw last week, and then they had the WWE Network exclusive, I think on Tuesday, where King Barrett won. Now, I predicted right when they announced the King of the Ring, and I looked at the brackets, I'm like, you know what they need to do? They need to do a Barrett-Neville rematch, because those guys met on the pre-show of Extreme Rules, and Neville got the victory, and I thought that was odd and cool all at the same time, and I'm like, oh, now it makes sense. Now Barrett gets the rematch, he gets to beat Neville on the bigger stage and actually win the King of the Ring, and I have no problem with that. I'm a big Wade Barrett fan. I'm happy for him. He had a tag team match tonight where he teamed up with Sheamus to take on Neville and Dolph Ziggler. Barrett and Sheamus won that match, I believe. I think Barrett caught Neville with the forearm smash or something like that and got the pin. And there might be one or two other things about Raw that I've left out, but overall the show was fantastic. A+. WWE came through for us. WWE came through for that Montreal crowd. And you know what sucks is that, next week is going to be horrible. The WWE can never keep it rolling when they're like this. Whenever you have a show that just feels so good, things are rolling. I was having a blast tweeting. I got retweets out the ass tonight. Mick Foley and his son Dewey Foley, Scott Stanford from the WWE pre-show, and Harry Smith all retweeted some shit that I said tonight. I was getting a kick out of it. I was enjoying Raw. I was enjoying myself. I drank a six-pack. I talked with all of you. It was fun. Tonight, Raw was fun. And that's what I miss about WWE sometimes. Sometimes Raw just makes you mad. I want Raws to be fun. I want to enjoy watching them and get a kick out of watching them. And this show tonight kept me entertained damn near for the entire 3 hours. And that is a rarity in today's day and age. Now, before I get out of here, I do just want to touch on a couple of things. Last Monday night on Raw, right as the main event started, some news broke about a very sad passing in professional wrestling, and one that made me really feel like a deep sense of loss, and that is the passing of Verne Gagne. In my life, some of my earliest childhood wrestling memories were of the AWA. I always loved that promotion. I know it very well. I know the history of it. I know a lot of things that happened there. I love the storylines, the angles, the feuds, a lot of guys that came in and out of there. Just an unbelievable list of wrestlers that Verne helped train. He was one of the best trainers and promoters. You know, I think of guys like Verne Gagne and Stu Hart, their fingerprints will be on this business probably until the end of time. That's how far their reach extends. And I was never really that big of a Verne Gagne fan because he was a promoter, and promoters could be sleazy, and he did put the belt on himself a lot, but that was the way it was back then. All the promoters did that. But Verne, I think, was stubborn in a lot of ways, and he had a really old-school mentality, and you always heard a lot of wrestlers complain about that. And Verne Gagne actually had the chance to be Vince McMahon. He was the one that had Hulk Hogan on his roster when Hulkamania started to bubble, when the Rocky movie came out, and he was in AWA as a babyface, taking on Nick Bockwinkel for the heavyweight title. He was making money off merchandise, and he was a huge character. And Verne Gagne, you know, still in his old-school ways, didn't realize that, and basically a whole set of circumstances took place that allowed Hulk Hogan to go over to Vince and go work for the WWE. He went over there and took it to the next level. Verne could have kept him, but I think it was all about money, and it was all about, you know, a different mentality of a promoter. Vince Jr. had a completely different vision and philosophy than Verne Gagne did, which is why he was able to grab Hulk Hogan and do what he did with the WWE. But Verne had a chance because they were right there. When you thought about the wrestling promotions back then in the 70s and even the early 80s, AWA was neck and neck with the WWE. And actually, Jim Crockett Promotions weren't far off either. The three of those, I mean, WWE, they definitely were in the lead. They definitely were the top dog, but not by much. And I have a ton of respect for Verne Gagne and for everybody that he helped get into this business and everybody that he helped train and everybody that worked for him over the years. The AWA was a hell of a promotion. I've mentioned it before that DVD, WWE actually did a documentary on the AWA years ago. It's probably close to 10 years old, but it's out there. It's probably dirt cheap on eBay. I would guess $1. It could possibly even be on the WWE Network or YouTube, but find it. The Legacy of the AWA DVD that the WWE released in 05 or 06, it is fantastic. I highly recommend it, and I was very saddened to hear about Verne Gagne's death because, you know, he's one of those promoters. It's just such a big chunk of wrestling's history that died. I wasn't a fan of Verne's personally, and I know in recent years, I mean, he was suffering from dementia, and he even killed someone in the nursing home because he fucking went out of his mind. So Verne Gagne passing was probably a good thing. At least he's at peace now, because he obviously was not over the last few years of his life. But still, it was like when Randy Savage died. It's just such a big part of wrestling when somebody that large passes away. And it just makes you sad. Even if you don't really like the guy, it just makes you sad. So rest in peace, Verne Gagne. Condolences to your family and everybody that you touched in the world of wrestling. Speaking of awesome promoters, Stu Hart. Yesterday would have been his 100th birthday. Can you believe that? I remember when he died in 2003, how sad that was, and what a bad year that was for deaths. Road Warrior Hawk, Miss Elizabeth, Crash Holly, Stu Hart. I think there was even one or two others. A lot of people died that year, but I remember being especially sad to hear about Stu Hart's death. And he was one of the most respected promoters, because a lot of promoters weren't well-liked universally across the board. Some people liked him, some people didn't. Stu Hart's a guy that you really never heard anything bad about. You heard bad things about the Jarretts, about the Crockett's, about Verne, about Bill Watts, but you never heard anything bad about Stu Hart or Don Owens or even Vince Sr. You know, those were some of the, or Eddie Graham, for that matter, was mostly liked from what I remember. But, you know, I just think Stu Hart turning 100 years old, or if he'd be alive, he'd be 100 years old, is quite the milestone. And it's just sad how time is flying. Seemed like just yesterday Stu was in his 70s appearing on WWE shows alongside his sons. And now today he would have been 100 years old. So Verne Gagne and Stu Hart, you have my undying respect, and I was thinking about both of you a lot in this past week. I also did catch the Stephanie McMahon interview on the Chris Jericho podcast after SmackDown last week. I was able to see that on the WWE Network, and I found it enjoyable. Maybe wasn't as juicy as a Vince McMahon or a Triple H one, but I still enjoy the dynamic between Jericho and Stephanie because they have such a history, and I thought it was so funny that he was the one interviewing her, considering how they started all those years ago working together, and they had a really nice, cordial interview. Jericho put over Stephanie hard, saying, you know, if it weren't for you, if it weren't for my interaction with you and my feud with you on television, I probably wouldn't have excelled to the level I excelled on, because I was floundering. I was floating around. I had nothing to do. Next thing you know, I start working with you, and things clicked, and his career took off. And he credits Stephanie with a lot. And she was extremely gracious to the compliments that he gave her, and she told some really good stories. I enjoyed the old school stuff. I liked hearing her talk about Andre and things like that. But they also talked about some current things, including the Ronda Rousey speculation and controversy, because the WWE clearly wants to use her next year at WrestleMania 32, but Dana White has come out and said she will not be doing that. So there's still a lot of time to work things out. I think Dana White said some other things that turned out not to be true in the past either. And Ronda Rousey is a big WWE fan, and I'm sure if she wants to do it bad enough, they'll work something out. It's not like she's going to get hurt. You know, she's probably going to whip Stephanie's ass. So I wouldn't fucking worry about it, Dana White. But he did ask Stephanie about that, and she was like, hey, we'll see. But she did acknowledge, like, yeah, right now nothing's worked out, but we're trying to work something out. All in all, I enjoyed the interview, and there's really nothing that juicy about it that I can even think to discuss. But a lot of people were asking me if I saw it and if I enjoyed it, and the answer is yes and yes. I think the final thing I'm going to talk about before I get out of here is the Floyd Mayweather-Manny Pacquiao fight. Now, I was going to talk about this fight and give a prediction for it if I would have come up here last week and did a Raw review, but I never did. But I did make a prediction, I believe, on Twitter and Facebook, and I reluctantly picked Floyd Mayweather to win via decision. I didn't think either guy would knock the other out. I think the fight is coming 7 to 10 years too late. I would have loved to see this years ago. To me, with Pacquiao, after that last knockout he had that looked like he got his face bashed in, plus, given Pacquiao's age and, quite frankly, in the stage of the careers that they're in, Mayweather's probably just an all-around better fighter. I expected him to win via decision. It's a shame. I was really rooting for Manny Pacquiao because I really don't like Floyd Mayweather. I think he's a fucking douchebag, and he's a woman beater, and he's an idiot. He's a rich idiot. I mean, what did he get, $100 million for that? Are you kidding me? That jerk doesn't deserve that kind of money. I heard that he was going to bail out Suge Knight. Is there any fucking truth to that at all? If there is, that's some fucked up shit. I just don't like him. And the thing that sucks the worst about it is I can't even say something cool like, oh, if I ever see him, I'm going to kick his ass, because I can't. He would fucking kill me, and I don't want that to happen either. So it sucks that a piece of shit like that is undefeated, and now that he finally was able to defeat the one guy that everybody wanted to see him face, and the guy that he ducked for so long, and he finally beats him in his final fight, that's the way to go out. And even though I don't like Mayweather, if I was in his shoes, I'd be feeling pretty good. So yes, I did see the fight. I was mildly entertained by it because it did go the distance, and it definitely wasn't boring, and it ended the exact same way I thought it would, and that's with a Mayweather victory. So unfortunately, he was able to beat Pacquiao, but I was glad we were finally all able to see the fight of the century. So I think that's it for this week. I should be back up here next Monday night after Raw. I do have to head out of town. I'm heading back to Detroit, my homeland, where I was born. I will probably never visit Detroit again after this trip. I unfortunately have to go to a funeral, but it's going to be a short trip because I got a lot going on, so I will be back by the weekend, and I should be up here, hopefully, maybe live tweeting during Raw next week, and hopefully doing a Raw review as well, or at least a Payback predictions video sometime around midweek. So you guys take care. Thank you again for listening, and I'll catch you in a week or so. Peace.